Hi everyone, welcome to Mentally Strong Mums. This one's going to be a good little one, especially for yourself and if you're in a romantic relationship, as well as understanding with your own kids about intergenerational legacy. And obviously, in this modern world, everything revolves around money, all right? And that's what they say, money doesn't buy happiness, but it sure makes things a lot easier, right? And when you don't have money, when you're living week to week, especially if you're a single mum and you're really struggling, and even when you go to Aldi, it doesn't cut it, and groceries are obviously so expensive, you can't afford sports anymore. Um, Schooling, everything like that can be horrendous. So if you are in a position where money isn't a problem for you, that can also cause a little bit of stress within relationships because it's about who manages the money, who can invest the money, where do we then go forward with the money, right? So it can always be these kinds of power struggles within the relationship. And especially if I never got taught by my parents about money, it can be really overwhelming and I have no idea. And sometimes it's something that I avoid and I don't want anything to do with. Do you know what I mean? Bury my head in the sand. So it's also interesting with money how if we could ever be in a position where we had generational wealth. So we had enough money to be able to pass it on to our children so we can set up that legacy for them so they never had, especially for you, if you had scarcity growing up, so that you never had that kind of scarcity and then had the luxury of money. And there's also now with how easy and accessible everything is, where all the online sales is, all that Black Friday stuff, but also everything can get paid off in four payments. So that can also be a trap for people as well. And I've even had a couple of people that have come in for couples counseling with me, and that is a reoccurring theme and a huge wedge in their romantic relationship because one of them ended up spending a little too much without telling the other person out of shame, out of fear of judgment, fear of ridicule, because we were earning our own money, but sometimes it can feel like it can kind of, I'm not safe to say this. I don't think you'll support me. Sometimes it can also be like a comfort. Sometimes it can also be a bit of an addiction, right? And then the other person, your partner's found out that you've got this whole secret account and that you've had all these payments in full, and now I'm going to have to pay everything off, and all of our income has started to go. It's also about future planning, about are we organized or have a budget to be able to help plan for leisure and joy and the things that make us happy in life. So humans are built for pleasure. And if I feel like I'm working all the time, but not doing anything with it, not investing it, not enjoying it, that can also be another stressor that couples have when they come in as well. They work, they've got fearful, we've got enough money in the bank, or we've paid off our mortgage or whatever that looks like, but they still are fearful of spending any money. They won't do anything with me on the weekends. They're ultimate mixed Scrooge. So it can be very difficult about what we've learnt about money and how to be able to bring that to our romantic relationship. And if we're not in a romantic relationship anymore and I'm alone as a single parent, obviously the additional stresses that that may cause as well, especially if I don't have a really good foundation of money. In this day and age, obviously, if we want to understand and learn about money, it's really accessible. There's Facebook groups that you can go on to. Obviously, there's books, there's podcasts, all of this stuff. And that's what I want to share with you, a couple of them about the basic theories of money, how to be able to understand how it impacts you, as well as having a conversation with your partner about it. So the first one, it's understanding money types. And there's this man, Ramit, Sethi, Ramit, and he has come up with four different money types. So, number one is the spender. So, finds joy in experiences, gifts, and generosity. So, they're spending and it makes them happy. So, then even when they're spending money, there's an emotional connection with that. So, that emotional connection then sometimes overrides logic or budget or other people within the relationship. So, number one is the spender. Number two is the saver. Number two, the saver is feel safe when money is controlled and secured. Feel safe when there's structure in the business and with budgeting. I need to be able to save. I need to be able to have a nest egg. I need to be able to prioritize that. And it's interesting sometimes if you are the saver, you also do that not with money, but with other things within your house as well. Number three is the avoider. The avoider is they get quite anxious or overwhelmed by money talk. They want to avoid it altogether. They don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to handle it. They're overwhelmed by numbers. That could even be something along the lines of if you're dyslexic or you've got dyscalculia. It can also be one time when I was younger, I had a credit card and I overspent. I had a huge debt and now I'm terrified of everything and I just avoid it, right? So number three is the avoid. I don't want to talk about it. You handle it. I'm horrible with numbers. I don't know anything about repayments. I don't want to know either. Just handle it, right? And number four can be the investor. So the investor loves that optimization, that growth, that strategic financial planning. And in a way, that would obviously be beneficial for all of us. It didn't matter how much was left over our budget after a budget each week, whether it be $1, $2, or even some. I read somewhere that someone in their family got $4,000 a week, and I was like, and they couldn't afford. They said they couldn't afford to live on $4,000 a week, and in my mind, we're quite humble. We don't have that amount of money or income each week. And so when I was like, and they can't afford to live, like my dream would essentially be going grocery shopping without a budget. That's how I knew that I was a success in life, right? And sometimes when I hear about those people that have a budget of $4,000 a week, that in my mind is a disposable income. But that's not a judgment. That's my own stuff that I'm carrying in. And it can be difficult if then that comes with shame. That's a perfect example of how sometimes it can be really difficult and to be honest about money because of the stigmas around money, right? That's why they're an avoider. Also about the misunderstandings about investment. Also, there's the how we need to all kind of had that oh, they've got that amount of money, oh, they're so rich, although they're so fancy, I can't believe it. And so then that sometimes has shame around money. So then I feel like I can't talk about it, I can't talk about my investments, I can't talk about how pride I have in it because I've been made to feel like I have shame, right? It's also that comparisonitis that we all have to be it. Tall poppy syndrome is what I'm looking for. Tall poppy syndrome is that phenomena in Australia and New Zealand where if anyone gets bigger and taller than the other poppies in the field, we need to cut them off somehow. So, oh, you're boasting. Oh, you're bragging. Oh, what a show pony. Gosh. So we'll take them down a peg. So that's why I don't talk about my achievements. I don't talk about my promotions. And I don't talk about if I get $4,000 per week because you get the reactions like I literally just had going, oh my gosh, you get $4,000 a week and you still can't afford. Do you know what I mean? So that's why money, it can be very difficult and what you have been raised and how you've been surrounded and your relationship with money can impact one, how you talk about it, if you're that spender, saver, avoider, or investor. So at least if your partner was kind of the same as you, we're both spenders, that can have negative impacts within the family because there's no saving, there's no investing, right? But even if there's one that's an investor and then the other one's an avoider, that means that the one that's avoiding doesn't want to know anything, right? So then the investor, there's a lot of different things that they end up hiding money here and putting it over here and investing in here, but investing in blah, 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 blah. Just sign this for me. But because the avoider doesn't have anything to do with the money, they then don't know where their money's invested. So then if they for a lack of a better example, they have a separation or a divorce, then there can be all this hidden money because they don't know what they've been investing in under their names. Just handle it for me. Yeah, I'll sign whatever you want. And obviously, with all of these four different ones, depending if we're the same or if we're different, if we don't talk about it, that's how sometimes it can lead to resentment within the relationship. So, resentment can come from I'm an overspender and I put everything on the pay in full, and now I've got a big debt, credit cards off the chain, and I can't afford to eat this week or next week or the week after. Do you know? It can also have miscommunication. If I have a lot of anxiety and I get scared to bring things up and then I'm anxious, I'm not being able to be fluid in my conversation. So then it can cause miscommunication. What do you mean? Where did you put it? What did you do with it? Well, I don't know. You're right. And then that exacerbates the shame around that as well. And then I'll shut down and then I don't want anything to do with it anymore, right? Sometimes there can be power struggles, especially if we're both full-time parents, we both have an income, right? Sometimes as well, the gender power balance, but if the woman is the primary breadwinner, where she earns more money, what does that look like in the relationship, right? So money is huge in terms of safety in relationships, in pride. And when there's that power struggle, well, I want to spend money on this. Well, I don't. Well, you know what? I'm going to have my own account and I'm going to start putting money into that. Well, I'm going to have my own account as well and I'm going to start. No, we're meant to be a team. How can we work together and get back on the same page, right? We want to prevent any of that financial secrecy because in a romantic relationship and a marriage, we don't want secrets. And something as big sometimes as money can be catastrophic. Because imagine if one of the secrecies I've ended up having I'm a secret gambler, that's my addiction, and I realize that I've got a gambling debt of about $60,000 and no one's known about it. I'm sorry, we now have to sell the house. We have to sell everything because I have to go bankrupt, right? So it's huge in money to be able to get on the same page, be really brave to be able to have those conversations about it, right? So understanding which one you are and understanding which one your partner is, right? There's also the Australian man, Scott Pape. He's the Barefoot Investor. And so his background story is that I think he lived in Tasmania and essentially his house burnt down and he had no money, no savings. He had nothing. And when his house burnt down, he didn't have anything to rebuild. And he made that promise to himself that he would never be in that position again. So then he's able to have a theory, books, Facebook pages, and also for kids about barefoot investing and what does that look like, right? So obviously with me, you take everything with a grain of salt. So you don't have to get obsessive about Scott Pape or with Rumit, with his kind of stuff. Just take a little bit of everything, right? And so even with the barefoot investor, his lessons or advocacy or advice is essentially to have four different categories, right? So the first one is like your budget to understand all of what's going on that you need and what you're spending, including your subscriptions, your insurance, your household, all of that kind of stuff, right? Also, there's a savings that you need to be able to put a certain amount away for savings, and that's that rainy day kind of stuff. There's also for gift and generosity, charity, and what that looks like moving forward. So, being able to figure out in your budget with your income, depending on what you're doing, and especially sometimes if we did have a really good income, just say of that $4,000 per week, but then something happened where I now can't work full time, right? I'm disadvantaged. I don't get the income that I can. So then I feel like everything's now being put to the back foot and I'm now disadvantaged and it's going to take me a lot stronger. So having a look at those different buckets according to the Barefoot Investor, figuring out in terms of percentages what's realistic for you and what's not. And just before we finished as well, understanding where you came from. Did you come from a background of scarcity or abundance? Now, if you don't know what that is, essentially there's a theory that we all have a money blueprint. And money blueprint is, what did you learn from your parents? How did they spend? What was your lifestyle like? And how did you adopt that and bringing that into your current? So if I came from a scarcity mindset, there's never enough. I can't afford that ever. Money is very stressful. Money is very dangerous. Money is also that shameful kind of thing. We don't talk about money. We don't mention it. Wait, I don't know anything, right? If others have more, I must have less. And then sometimes that scarcity, where it comes to that saver, is I need to hold on to everything that I can. It's that paranoia, it's that fear, it's that everything. I can't. Well, can we just go out this weekend? No, because it's going to cost money. But your savings is great. It's fine. No. But we're within budget. No. It's that ultimate scarcity mindset. So how can you almost have that balance of scarcity by understanding with abundance? And what does that look like in terms of a money financial blueprint moving forward, right? So when you have an abundance mindset, it essentially means that money flows to me when I align with my values. So extreme manifesting, all of those kinds of things are like, well, money grows on trees. If I can figure out how to be able to tap it, it will be passive income. It will be abundant for me. If I'm not scared of it, I then can embrace it and let me move forward with it, right? So that would also be number 4, the investor. If I can figure out with this a little money, how I'm able to invest it in this and how it then grows every month. So having that abundance mindset is a completely different perspective than coming from a place of fear and paranoia and scarcity, right? That abundance is also, well, there's enough for everyone. We'll be able to figure everything out, all of that kind of stuff, right? Um, Also, that abundance mindset is I can make wise decisions and still enjoy my life. So that's also about being sensible with money because of that abundance. Even though I might have an abundance of money like that $4,000 per week, it doesn't mean that I have to spend every single cent. Do you know? Maybe I could figure out my own buckets and what I want to put them in. Maybe I want to start up a little bank account for my kids and put $5 a week in their little bank account and then give it to them as a gift when they turn 18 or 19 or 20 or whatever that looks like. Maybe in my bank accounts, I've divvied up one bank account for bills, one bank account for holidays, and one bank account for school. So then at the end of each week, however much, there's another one, it's called, if you were in business, it's called the profit first method. And the profit first method is essentially with all your expenses and whatever that looks like at the end of the week or at the end of the month, whatever money's left over, you then reinvest it into the things that are really important to you. So then one will be an account for holidays, one will be an account for bills, and then one will be an account for schools, because obviously we know how expensive schools are. And so then when you can figure out that budget, you can then, with the profit first method, go back in to be able to adjust your percentages, because if you get a regular income, how that impacts my power and control and confidence in my spending, in my saving. And if I'm able to do that, then I can potentially have and look with curiosity at podcasts or books on how to invest it. So then instead of coming from that scarcity mindset, how to be able to have that abundance. Obviously, in me saying all of this as that social worker, I do need to acknowledge about marginalized communities and cultures. And sometimes, even as me saying that as a white privileged female, others don't experience what I've experienced as well. And sometimes even migrants coming from overseas that have amazing qualifications, uni degrees, extremely successful, and when they come to Australia, it's not recognised, it's not valid, and so then they don't earn that kind of income either, and they're not able to for a while because of the difference in countries, cultures, recognizations, and then sometimes the biases that of white privilege over. So even though I'm still, this podcast is primarily education about money moving forward, I also need to validate people that are listening and how difficult it can be for people. And sometimes, if you are in that poverty cycle, it is extremely difficult to get out of. It doesn't matter how much you think positively, manifest, or budget, because there's nothing left in the budget. So the poverty cycle is real and it can be awful to get into. And that's obviously why there's such an increase in homelessness at the moment. All right. I just needed to say that at the end because I don't want to be naive about everything. But it's just this holistic perspective to be aware of what does my life look like? What options do I have? If I were to able to have a generational legacy for my kids, what would that be? What was my generational legacy from my parents? I wonder what my financial blueprint is. I wonder what um, my if I am a spender, a saver, anxious, or avoid, or if I'm an investor. What kind of money type are you? And then if you can listen to things that are for free, like on Facebook, and join a Facebook group such as the Barefoot Investors, and people there have really lovely, honest conversations about what they do with money, how difficult it can be, how they overcome traps, as well as side hustles. Side hustles are huge. Obviously, this is my side hustle, so I'm not making any money at the moment. So maybe it's a passion project. I'm going to monetize it soon. But that's as well. If you want to be able to have a side hustle, how can you do that? All right. Well, I'm going to go now. So thanks so much for listening to me. I hope it was really helpful and I hope you have a fabulous day. Thank you so much for your time. Bye.